Hello and welcome to Driven by Doing. Today we have Nibu Thomas from Bengaluru, India. Nibu, welcome to the show Driven by Doing.
Thank you, Venki. It's a pleasure.
So, Nibu, you're currently working as an associate director at WhatFix, and you're doing some amazing things. And I have been following you for few weeks in the recent past on LinkedIn, and I was so amazed with the kind of work that you're doing. So let's go back and see where it all got started for you. Where did you journey began?
Yeah, like I was telling, my journey was kind of a roller coaster. So
Yeah.
let me start at the very beginning. Immediately after 10th, I was not very good at studies, or you could call me a late bloomer, right? I was um, when uh, when I had to study, I didn't study because it didn't really appeal to me at that time. But later on, I went on to graduate. I did post graduation. I got a bunch of certifications, and sometimes at the top of my class. So that concept of a late bloomer, struck late for me. So I immediately after 10th, I thought that I need to get into, I need work, right? I thought that, I cannot study. Studies is not for me, right? At least right now. Let me get uh, um, some kind of work. And what I did is I did 3 years of apprenticeship, which is basically job oriented training. So I got to work with machines. I got to work with my hands. And after 3 years, I was absorbed into Bosch as a technician. It's a blue collared work. And the other stigma there was the dignity of labor, right? You aren't, even though you can do certain things really well, right? It's not everybody who can actually operate one of those machines. I used to operate a machine which used to cost more than a crore at that time, and it used to machine, jigs and fixtures to an accuracy of 1 micron, which is if you divide 1 millimeter into 1,000 parts, that was the accuracy of the machine. And
Wow.
yeah, in order to maintain that accuracy, you would actually use instruments that were a tenth of that, the accuracy that you're trying to meet. Only then would you be able to, ensure that the accuracy is being maintained. I have pushed trolleys, I have assembled pumps, and I took a lot of pride in doing that. I thought that was my calling, but a few years, I'm almost 8-10 years into the thing. I realized, okay, this is not exactly. I mean, this is something that many people can do. I can do more, right? I need to do something with my head than with my arms or with my, with my limbs. And so I took, there was a VRS opportunity, which is basically a retirement of early voluntary retirement. And I took that, and I joined the call center, which was AOL, America Online, which was big, it was
Yeah.
speaking at that time. So I got in there, and then I had this ability to write well, and it was noticed. So basically, I was able to sell myself, saying that, okay, this guy doesn't need to take any more calls. Let's take him to the content side. So that was how I was able to get into technical writing in AOL. So I worked there for several years. So um, in at AOL, when I was taking calls, I used to make notes and send out newsletters. This was not part of my responsibilities, but I realized that the knowledge bases that we used weren't enough. The training that we got wasn't enough. We went through rigorous 1 month training, and then I've seen, and even I have cried on calls because I don't know what to tell the user. I wanted to help the user, but they had so many weird issues that I was so helpless. I was more helpless than them. There were many instances where the customer used to tell me, "Okay, calm down. Let's try to solve this ourselves." And it was sometimes it was the customer who helped us um, uh, become good agents. But that need to help someone, I think that is very fundamental for any profession. So if even when I'm looking for to hire writers, I look at one, they should be curious, right? Many students now are not, um, their curiosity has been subdued so much, right? When my daughter used to go to school, she used to ask me a lot of questions, and I remember, we used to get even we in smaller ages, we used to get a lot of comments in our diary saying talkative, right? And we were subdued from asking questions. And I think that nature um, you do more of what you're encouraged to do, right? So if you're not encouraged to ask questions, you stop asking questions. You doubt. You begin to doubt yourself. But somehow that did not impact me. Even in my recent uh, conversation with my boss, he said, he actually wrote, what is your superpower? Your superpower is curiosity. You find something and you try to find the what is it that is behind. You try to get the insight behind that. So your superpower is curiosity, and I believe that is something that people should nurture. Even given our the kind of schooling that we go through, where we have to put our finger on our lips, and everybody is supposed to be we put everybody into the same funnel and expect them to come out differently. uh, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, so coming back to AOL, so I noticed these things, and I used to put out newsletters saying, okay, if you're facing this issue, these are the things that are fixing it for me. Or this is also something, maybe I was listening to somebody else's calls. I've actually gone on my holidays just to listen to how people take calls. And it was ridiculous because these were graveyard shifts. Like, I mean, it used to start sometime in the two in the night, and it used to go on for 8 hours. And we used to get 2 days off, and I used to come on one of those days just to listen how the others are taking the calls. So there's one more incident in Bosch. So Bosch is like blue collar people, right? So if they didn't, every 3 years or something, there was this wage negotiation that happened. And if they did not get the wages that they were demanding, they used to go on a strike, right? But I firmly believe that you cannot solve a problem by creating another one, right? I had that sense of customer then also. Of course, now if I look back, I look at it as it's not teamwork, or what difference could it have made? I was putting myself in a lot of risk, because many years back during a strike, they're actually thrown acid on people who came to work, and it's a very dangerous situation. But I was an idealist then, right? And I was one of 2 or 3 people who had come to work among 10,000 people who stayed back for a strike. And I was actually supported by my team, saying he's a little crazy, ignore him. He doesn't, I mean, he's not saying that, you should not get more money, or you should not demand for more. He's just saying that the way that you're doing it is wrong, right? And there were people who supported me. There were people who didn't support me, and that's when I felt, right. So is my value to the company being decided by this collective bargaining, or can I do something on my own? So that's when I started to think, okay, I should be able to do something with my writing skills, right? But when I tried to apply to copywriting, because I love the creative side of writing, right? They wouldn't even consider, because I didn't have any experience. And how do you get experience? I mean, my experience was in the mechanical side, and I didn't have any experience. So there was one agency that had actually called me for an interview based on the assignment that I did. But then I was doing my MBA at that time, and they said that is also important, and they didn't want me to continue. They wanted me as a full-time employee, right? So I said, no, I have to spend some time there. I'll be able to do what is possible with my 8 or 9 hours here, but I need time for that as well. So that didn't really work out then. And then I joined the call center. I got into technical writing. Then I moved to a supply chain company where I was for another 8 years. And I did several certifications. So when I was in Bosch, I was not a graduate, right? So I used to, I've signed up for Open University and did my graduation, which is in commerce. And then later I did a master's in mass communication. Then I'm also a PMP certified project manager. And I've done the usability certification from Human Factors. I was also one of 3 people who were certified from my organization in the domain supply chain, CSCP. That's a pretty difficult certification. I think I spent a lot of sleepless nights trying to understand that. But yeah, like I said, late bloomer, constantly learning, learning never stopped. And right now I'm with Whatfix for the past year or more. I've been with Whatfix. I again in content, I create content that would help our customers use the product effectively.
That's awesome, because like there are so many things that you navigated entire throughout your like 2+ decades of experience. And right, going back where you got started, taking that first opportunity as as an apprenticeship, right? Like you
Mm,
took that
mm,
opportunity, and sometimes, I mean, especially I'm from India too, and like I
mm.
could relate. Hey, there is this social stigma that like only once you
Yes.
graduate, that's when you have to work. Until then, like our parents are so protective that hey, like
Mm.
I don't know if he's able to do it. Like we have the social stigma around us as well.
Yes. Yes.
And
Which I think
sometimes,
is very
yes.
unfair, because how many people can become doctors, how many people can become engineers? Why are you forcing our elephants onto the trees? They were never meant to climb trees, right? Somebody has to drive the car. Find somebody who loves to drive. don't make it don't make it a stigma to be a driver in India.
Mm,
That is something that I think as society we need to change, right?
absolutely.
There are people who love to work on machines. I've worked with some what do you say, I don't get a good descriptive word for them, but they were impressive with the kind of work that they did on the machine. They used to do some phenomenal kind of output. They could do things that were done on a lathe on a milling machine, right? Uh, and that needed a lot of imagination, and they had to actually solve problems in order to come up with the gears that are necessary, in order to imagine uh, of the possibilities. They had to basically imagine what was possible, and they used to come up at the entrance of the uh, training what do you say center. There was this model, this thing, and when you looked at the thing, you just wonder how did they even machine this thing. it I mean, I'm not able to show you any of those, but you can probably look at maybe Google or something, and there are some models that you can't imagine how did they get it. It was like somebody just waved a magic stick and it came into being, right? So you have round stuff which is made on lathes, and you have block like stuff which is made on milling machines or shaping machines. But many of those models were a combination, right? And it was totally amazing to see what the kind of imagination that they had there. But we were forcing all of our youngsters to get into IT, right? And now, very shortly, I think we will face a big, what do you say, a demand, or what do you, um, what do you
Deficit
say, a
in
big
those.
gap. Yeah, deficit, a deficit in the careers where we need people, right? You can't just survive on IT, right? And that is where I think we need to encourage our children. The schooling needs to change. I mean, people, you have 9 different kinds of intelligences. Why are you looking at memory for to get through a system? There may be children who are intelligent but cannot remember, right? Should they take exams? So those are things that our government needs to think about. There are children with different kinds of intelligence. They should be mentored and helped to get to the career that uh, they actually were born for, right? So um,
Do you think as a society that the whole mindset has to change first? Because especially I'm an engineer, who studied
mm,
back in India, and
yeah,
sometimes going through that education, and it was, I mean, I had this belief of, hey, like I was not super talented, I was not super skillful, but
mm,
yes, I did my engineering, and now I got into software engineering. And sometimes down the line, just going back and thinking then,
mm,
I thought I was I mean, there is this stigma of only people who went to these top colleges and top universities, they are the ones like we look
mm,
up to, saying that hey, like I wanted to be like them. Yes, there is no problem with that, but even our
mm,
parents, our education system made us believe that that's the only way that you can really bring hope into life, or do the things that you love. And even I mean, even I was talking a while ago, with you that like how sometimes parents aren't even aware of all these different kinds of opportunities because they were not taught the same way like well they were kids. So it's generation after generation, it's going through the same path which we
Correct.
have to break at some point to like
It's a
really
vicious
create that.
circle.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's very often I find, it is the parents' dream that the children are trying to fulfill. It's the parents who are not able to do something, and they want their children to do it instead. That is what the Indian system is like. They are not comfortable with finding out what the child wants to do and let them go free. Today, I mean, it's not like many years ago that as soon you had to have a big family and everybody had to contribute, right? Most people are in the middle class. They can afford to take risks, fail, and then find what they were, what is their calling. So it's that is where I think we are lacking as a society. And then there is this dignity of work, right? So in the US, you have plumbers and carpenters driving a car, and the there is no stigma attached to the kind of work, right? No, a banker is not given a very high what do you say
Respect
status,
or yeah, status.
respect. Yeah, money brings a lot of I
Status.
mean status, but the kind of work I think should be respected, right? That is the reason why we have a lot of people who should be teaching who are actually coding. But they are passionate about teaching, but because the payment is much higher in software, they are unfortunately doing something that they are not. They do well, but here's something that they could do extremely well,
They're
and
not super happy.
they are not super happy. They are not super happy.
Just because the pay is high, like we are getting into
Yes.
that path of like, hey, like I'm making a lot of money, but at the, I mean, like going back to like home after work, it's like, hey, like I mean, this is great. I'm getting paid well, but like I'm not really happy
Something
what
is
I'm
missing.
doing. Yes.
Correct.
But like if
Yeah.
you but again, like what I'm seeing the trend is, yes, we are coming out of colleges, yes, we are getting breakthrough, getting that first software engineering job, or like whatever the job that we get offered, and our parents now see, hey, like my son or daughter is so successful now that if you break that chain saying that like I do not like this after maybe a 6 months or 1 year, like this is not me, like I do not see myself like working for the next 20-30 years in this field. But at that time it is super difficult for them to convince their parents, convince the society that like, because everybody asks you, hey, what's up with you, like what are you doing? And every time we have the stigma of like not able to go after things that we love just because of this, the whole pressure around us. Do you think that plays a major role?
Definitely. I think the society and the impression about different kinds of work, even the education, many years back, I've heard my seniors in Bosch saying that if you had work at Bosch, people were ready to give you a girl. So there were certain industries or companies that were the Infosys and the Wipros of that time. Yeah. So even if you didn't have to study a lot, right? At that time, the Germans came, and the way that they recruited, they're just calling people from the road, saying, "Come here, I will teach you how to do this, how to operate this machine, and I will pay you so much." And people were happy with that, right? So that has changed. Now we have blown up as a population, and it becomes very difficult to distinguish yourself from somebody else. Because everybody has gone through the same funnel, right? So I was looking at a bunch of resumes from a college. I'm looking at interns. So I mean, you look at the resumes, you can't, just the name is different. I mean, everything else is more or less the same, right? So I think you're doing a fantastic job when it comes to when you've identified that the need is mentoring. You need to find people who can help you, right? You need to open up, right? You need to be comfortable opening up with somebody else. Sometimes you may not even know that you're not comfortable. How do you solve such a problem? When you look at LinkedIn and many people interact with my posts, I see that the viewage of my post is very high, but only a fraction of the people actually are interacting with it. Even liking something would they're not comfortable with it. It would show that okay, they are on LinkedIn at this time, right?
Yeah.
So they like this person's post. There could be many reasons for it, but how do we get people to become comfortable with that? Because that is kind of carrying on with people from colleges. They're not comfortable. It's not that they don't have unique thoughts. It's not that they don't come up with ideas. Uh, they are not comfortable opening up, right, about an idea. It may not be something that okay, what if I fail? That may not be. They need to be comfortable just opening up. That failure comes later, right? That's a result. But how do we get our people or our students to just get comfortable with who they are? That is who I am, right? That is, I think, that is an area that we need to address. And technology only facilitates it, right? But the other thing is the mindset, like you were saying. We need to change that mindset so that it encourages people to open up. Only then will it become a community.
Absolutely, you're super super insightful. Like, just sharing that insight, because like, going through this and listening to just your story, right? Like, you always were fascinated, like, initially with machines. Like, you wanted to work on something, and people saw that your strength is also like, content writing, and like, sometimes yes, you face some troubles going into that, like, the next path for you, and the transition is going to be difficult for a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, like, are stuck in their current roles or current jobs. Like, they're trying to find out, like, what's that they love doing. And sometimes, I mean, it took me a lot of years to kind of, like, find what I'm passionate about, and it is the same with you, and it is the same for most of the people, right? But they are super afraid of, like, taking that step forward. And what I believe is, like, take that small thing that you could do today that can help you get going, because sometimes it can be overwhelming as well, because career transitions aren't easy, because you have to convince your family, you have to convince your parents. Like, there are a lot of things, especially coming from, like, the Indian community background. But here it is different in the United States. So that, again, we talked about the whole the dignity of labor, and we were not taught in ways that, hey, like, you can do anything. But like, we have only specific kind of roles. Like, I always tell my friends, saying that, hey, like, you know what, when we are born, it's almost like decided that, hey, you are going to become an engineer, you are going to become a doctor. But that's not the way the world works, because the kid is going to see so many different things for 20 years before he decides what is the career path for the rest of his life, right? So changing that mindset is also isn't easy, because they were not brought up the same way. And because of the digital technologies, there is so much opportunities that we haven't even could imagine. And there are so many fields that are coming up every year, new technologies, new fields, but people aren't aware of all these things. So where do you think people can start to look at different options to take that next step forward? Because sometimes, yes, they might start something, but again, they might not even like that after, like, 6 or 8 months. So taking that, like, how would you tell people to test several things, because they have to experience several things in order to find out what they like and what they don't? Where do you think, like, even students or even professionals who are in their mid-level careers should try to learn what they like the most to do in their careers?
Right. So my daughter is 13. She just turned 13, and she has to right now. I mean, it's not like in our time. Now you have to choose between economics, computer science, and she's got some electives in school itself. So I wanted to do some. I mean, I did some research looking at why does she actually have to make a lot of mistakes? Is there a shortcut? Right? How is there some way where she can find her strengths? She can find what she likes to do. She can find somebody to pay her for it. She can find the intersection of that, something where she can actually contribute to society. So those four things are the ikigai concept, basically, right? So you find what you love to do, you find what you're good at, you find somebody to pay you to do both of this, and at the intersection, whatever you do is contributing to society, right? So is there a shortcut? And I came across a certain career mentoring organizations, right? So what I did is, like I told, I'm very curious to know how it works. So I actually got myself
Enroll
certified
for
as
it. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I did the course so
Wow.
to see how it is done. And there are actually a lot of psychometric tests, and um, they do a pretty good job. About 80 to 90%, they will come out with what are your strengths, and they will tell you, okay, these are your intelligences based on some 180, 190 questions. I mean, the questionnaire, they put in different kinds of there's a lot of research into that, right? So they come up with different scenarios, and they ask you, how would you behave, right? And based on those questions, you can actually find out, these are things that I like to do, these are my strengths. And they have come up with some 22,000 careers, right? We know only a handful of careers, right? So they have come up with so many different you know, they have got an elaborate classification which I don't remember right now, but they came up with 22,000 careers. And um, so what I'm saying is, I think this is something that should be done at a very early stage, maybe around the 8th standard, which is where where the children, start becoming confident, where they're, becoming teenagers, and see if we can short circuit that process, because it's a dance of life, right? It's called the dance of life, where you're going on trying things, uh, trying to find out if you would be a fit, and then you just settle down, right? You're not really happy, but you just get tired of trying, and then your life goes on till you retire. That's not how it should be. There are many people who are not able to find what they were, uh, what they are good at, and what is something that they love to do. They just do it because of the salary that keeps coming, and they just do it. And there is the sad part is, after a few years, it recession hits. They get fired, and they find it very difficult to get back into the thing, because they've just stayed there. They have not improved on themselves. They haven't added value. uh, so does everybody have to go through that change, or is there a way to short circuit it? So I think there is a way, and that is something that our children should explore. So I firmly feel that they should talk to people. There are many organizations that do this, and they should understand much early. And once they get that right, then you can put a goal in their head, right? They're very impressionable at that age. You can give them a reason, and they start moving towards that goal. They decide what they're going to study. It's not that we tell them what to study, right? Even today, you just pick up somebody from a college and ask them, why are you studying? Why did you select this? You say, my parents told me to study this, right? What are you going to become after this? I don't know. Whatever comes, I'll take it. That is the majority of the answers that you're going to get. That's not going to be the case in case they are much more aware of what are the possibilities, what they like to do, what they're good at. And what they're good at is something that you learn with a little experience. You need to pay attention to the feedback that you get. You need to seek the feedback. There's a book that says feedback is a gift, right? So you should never look down on feedback. It's a very interesting book that I came across basically in a conference where a colleague of mine, he described this. He said feedback is a gift, and the way that you should receive it is just like how you would receive a gift, right? You don't find fault with it, right? You accept it gratefully. You assume that the person giving it has your best interest in mind, right? And there were several aspects to it. So when you're listening to this feedback, you come across instances where they tell you some of your strengths. Some of these may not be visible to you. When you write, you may like what you write, but does somebody else like it? If they like it, they will tell you, right? So that's how I came to know that I can write well. There was one job description. I'm good with these job descriptions. I'm not sure if you have seen some of the job descriptions are written for Whatfix, but there was one job description that I put out for a product manager. So I will send it to you later.
Absolutely.
That one got you love it. It got some 20,000 views on the first day.
Wow.
It just went viral.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the point is, Now, how I came, I mean, I put it together is I was applying my documentation skills, right? Understanding what is the requirement, who is the audience, and putting the document together, right? So even when I tell my writers, your intent is not to create documentation. You're a technical writer or an information developer. Your goal is not to create content. Your goal is always to improve the product so that it is so intuitive that you don't need that much documentation. People don't need to find out how to do it. They just get it. And being the first users of a product, you are the best people to give this feedback as a writer. So we have this this process where we can actually suggest improvements for our product. And I think in the past 1 year, my contributions or my team's contributions together, we are the second highest. The highest is from somebody else who was much older to me in the system. So that's how aware you are about the product when you try to improve the product. I mean, it's not like any other profession. You see, you give them a nail, they take a hammer and hit it, right? It's not like that. We don't. You give us a feature, we don't just document it. We look at it and we see, can it have been designed better? So when we started giving this feedback, they said, okay, you need to get involved much earlier. When we are even coming up with the framework or the wireframe, that's when you need to give us the feedback saying, okay, will this be, we are what do you say, a target user, okay, because people are creating content using Whatfix and we are also content creators. So we became a target user and we were able to give this feedback much earlier in the process.
That's just awesome, because you touched upon getting feedback early on, because it is super important for like early stage startups, and even like getting that feedback initially. It's so important, not just from a customer standpoint, but also like from the whole people who are building it, because like that's what we call like the customer discovery, right? Like when you're trying to build these new features, new products, that's where it starts. And sometimes you might get directly from your customers, and within the teams who are building this product, you need that making everybody on the same page and getting that early feedback, whether it is a technical writer, whether it is a product manager, product owner, like everybody like working together is super important. And I think you just nailed down to that, getting early feedback, no matter like whether it is your product, your career, like your work. Feedback is such an important thing, and many people have trouble getting that feedback, because Nibu, what I realized in my career so far is asking for feedback is the most difficult thing, because most of the times we are not comfortable to take that feedback, because we are on the back step. Like, I don't know, like if I could take that, because if that might hurt my feelings, but that's the opposite way. It's actually like preventing us from actually growing. Yes, it is going to be uncomfortable to listen to the feedback, because that's might be our weakness and that might be our blind spots. But sometimes most of us aren't really comfortable getting that like feedback that is going to be a little bit painful, but at the end of the day, that's what is going to make us grow.
That is what improves you. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So do you have like any examples in your career that you can like show tell us
for feedback?
Yeah, I mean, even for your subordinates, that like, hey, like somebody came up to me asking for feedback, this is how it helped in their career. I think you just shared your feedback that you got from your supervisor as well, that like really helped you, saying that, hey, like you are curious, like your curiosity is your strength. And sometimes feedback most of the times is actually a positive thing, but like that we just need to know, because that can be it boosts your confidence as well.
Yes. If you take, you have to have, I mean, again, it's a mindset, right? You have to create or prepare your mind to accept that feedback, whatever it is. That's why I said, right, the feedback is the gift. Consider it like a gift. You don't open a gift and see if it is what it is and then accept it, right? You accept it assuming it is good, and even if it is not good, you have already accepted it.
That's just awesome. So coming back to your current role, and you help like lots of organizations with digital adoption, and like those are your primary customers. And like what are some of the major challenges that you see when you work with customers who are like trying to help their customers, and you are going to like help with their digital adoptions? Like what are the major challenges that you see across the board when they come to you that you see common?
Right. So let me tell you about this product. I was actually a customer of this product, and
Okay.
then I loved it.
Okay.
From
Wow.
it's 2013 or something, 2014, when they were just two-member team, where basically the founders, Kadim and Vara, they had come and given a presentation in our company, and I just loved the concept. It was something that I was always looking for, right? It, when it comes to documentation, the challenge is that you are always dependent on your product process, right? So if you're putting out content along with your product, your product is, I mean, your content is considered part of the product, and you have to follow their process. If it goes once in 2 weeks or once in 4 weeks, you are at that mercy, right? But I always wondered, why do I have to be at that mercy, right? If I needed to change a full stop to a comma or add a small sentence in the help that is embedded in a product, why do I need to follow that process? I should be able to publish at will. And that is the ability that WhatFix gives the customer. They can add this content as a layer of help, independent of the way that the product is being designed. You can add this much after the product is built, and building this content will not take that much time and so many iterations. You can complete complete building your product, and then later build these workflows on top of your product. It's an integration. Basically, it's a JavaScript integration that goes into your header, or we also have extensions, which are if you don't own the product, like if you have Salesforce or Success Factors, they're not going to let them touch their code, right? There. So in that case, and that's mostly a internal facing use case where it's for your employees, right? So the challenges that customers face, you have the product and you have the content for the product, right? The thing is, one, you're not looking at how they are using your product, right? You've assumed something and created the content. Like now, still say we have created a product with 100 features, right? And 10 of those features are being used. The remaining 90 features are not being used. So your content should be in a position where you know which of those 90 features are not being used, and you also know, let's say you have 100 users and 10 users know all the features. You shouldn't be promoting your content to those 10 users. You should know how your product is being used, and this content needs to be presented to those who need this content. So I think that is also a challenge that we are trying to address using WhatFix. That's definitely, and many customers like this particular solution because it is in the flow of work, right? You're using the product. On top of the product, you have the help when you need it, where you need it. It's not like you have to go into a training class and then they open the application there and they explain the application there, right? It's not like that. It is in when you're using the product, it is part of your daily routine. So when you're trying to introduce something new to a user, you don't set apart time for that. Like this is an example that I use very often. Our HR in a previous organization, they wanted to present information to all the employees, but they found that the emails were not working. People had those rules, right? HR mail goes to this folder. So they tried these, they came up with these posters, and they wanted to find out where to put these posters. It should be in a place where everybody frequents. Then somebody said, okay, staircase, then or a lift, right? So they found, okay, some people use staircase, some people, and then they found a place where everybody goes to, they have to go to, which is the restroom. So our notice boards were there, and people read those notes because they have to spend so much time there, right? So there was time, and it was part of what they did daily. So that is the problem that we are trying to address. So that problem is getting addressed using the solution.
Wow. That's just like, I mean, just seeing those challenges that you are trying to solve, it's just amazing, because every customer goes through the same pain point, and it is the common across the board to help their customers. Like, you're helping your internal, and you're creating a product to help their own internal users or customers. And I think that's just amazing. And what would you suggest startups, like, building SaaS products? because sometimes technical documentation or content writing like might not be the top 5 things that they're focused on, but they have to start somewhere. Like what do you think, like where startups could start early in their journey for this documentation to help their customers?
So like I was saying, so they don't need to look at our as writers. They don't need to look at us like content for the product. Right? So because of our close involvement with the product team, with the engineering team, we understand the product as much, maybe as much as the others, right? They need to look at us as a resource or the first testers, right? Because we are trying to understand the product and then trying to use it, and then finding out, okay, these could be the gaps where we need to create content, right? So any startup that you see, technical writers are not the first functions that they hire. Even they go on for 3-4 years, and then they decide, okay, then they get complaints from customers saying, okay, your documentation sucks. So then they start they're firefighting, and they get the writer. But if they can hire a writer much in advance, I mean, only somebody who realizes this, the value that they bring, will be able to think about that. Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, you can't blame them. Also, they have their own priority and their constraints, I mean, it usually the writers come in at a later stage. But the value that they can add is much more than just content. That's the point that they need to understand.
Absolutely, that's just an awesome insight that you shared, especially for me, getting started and working on all these projects has really helped me understand the value of technical writing early in your product cycle. That can really not just help your product teams to understand. Sometimes we get confused as well, like why did we build that feature in that way? Sometimes it is also helpful for internal teams, because like teams might be changing and people might be coming on board quickly, because especially in the startups, like it is going to be chaotic, and sometimes you just need such clear documentation that can help people where they can go to, not just the customer standpoint. So I think it's just amazing that you shared that.
So the other thing about writers is, it's not just technical content that they can write. Some really good writers like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was kidding. So they are able to add much more value. Now, we have a professional services team, and even one of the JDs that I wrote for them, I was listening to my colleague, my peer. He was saying that when he was interviewing candidates, they were so impressed with the way the JD is drafted that even when they didn't make it, they said, "I will never forget that JD."
Wow.
So that's kind of the branding that you can get. I will send you these JDs. I think you will like it.
Absolutely, I would love that.
Yeah. So they can use the processes that they're using for this technical content to actually add a lot more value for the organization.
I think that's a lot of value, not just from external, and I mean it's both external and internal as well. So I think what would you suggest students or anybody who's listening to our show and podcast, who are thinking about, hey, I think that's interesting. I'm curious to learn more, where they can go to get more, to learn more, and are there any tools or blogs where they can go and learn more, and what do you suggest to them? Because you mentioned it to them, I wish somebody told me this. And I think you're now at a stage where you're helping, actually mentoring a lot of people in this area. Where can people find out or learn more about? Because especially people from communication majors and marketing, all these people might be it's interesting for them to learn more about technical writing and how companies are doing it. So where can they go find and help themselves?
You're going to love this answer.
Yeah.
It's from community.
Okay. Wow.
So there are communities for technical writers. There's the STC, which is I think 70-year-old organization, Society for Technical Communication, and there's a chapter in India. And we organize. I was the president about 3 years back, and we organize these conferences and even learning sessions. Every month there are events happening. Some of them are free. So you can, or very nominally priced, like 50 rupees or something like that. So you can actually attend them, and these sessions given by experts, and find out more about what is happening. You can attend these conferences as well, where you have speakers coming from international uh, um, uh, places as well. And there's another organization called TC World, which is mostly European, right? And they also have a conference sometime in February. STC is having a conference in December. It used to be a physical, now because of COVID, it is turning into a virtual event. So community is one of the best places where they can, find out what is the community for the career that you are aiming for, and try to be a part of it.
Absolutely. I think that's just amazing, that because these are all chapters, I mean, they have chapters across the world, and anybody who's listening to this can actually look at these organizations and learn more about this field, because that's exactly what I wanted to share. Like, there are tons of fields that I wanted to bring experts like you in different areas, so that people know about these careers and options that they have to deep dive into, and make them curious to learn more about these fields. And you are truly driven by doing, Nibul, and I was just fascinated to learn more about you and your story. And
I was so jealous that this title was taken. Driven by doing it.
So driven by doing is actually my university slogan. So University of Memphis slogan is driven by doing. So I was so wanting to create a podcast, and I was looking for a title, and said, you know what, driven by doing is something that I really care about, and I think everybody cares about. They are driven by doing, and I want to bring people like you who are truly driven by doing, and helping so many other people to get into this new careers and opportunities and mentoring others. And it was just amazing learning experience for me. And thank you so much for being on the show. And where can people find you and connect with you?
They can search for Nibu Thomas. There are many, but I think since I'm pretty active and I have a high SSI score, I'm in the top 1%. I mean, evidently. So I think they will find me. I work with WhatFix. I think that's the best place. That's where I'm usually there. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for this. For inviting me to your show, and I wish you all the best. And if someone wants me they want some guidance, especially when it comes to career guidance, I would happily, guide them to the right people as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nibu. Absolutely. So, I mean, your story is definitely inspiring for a lot of our listeners, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to reach out to you, and just definitely share it with me, and if anybody reaches out to you, so that we can share those stories as well.
Sure. It was a delight speaking to you, Venki, and all the best. I hope you get a lot of good guests.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for again coming onto the show.